This excerpt was taken from a Full and Bloom interview with Don Dokken. Released on this day in history 37 years ago, Dokken's Tooth and Nail. You can listen to the entire interview and a clip with Tom Werman where he talks about Tooth and Nail by clicking the links in the description. What was it like working with Jeff Workman on Tooth and Nail?
Jeff was great, famous engineer. But, the protocol for Jeff Workman was he would stay up all night. I'd be up all night singing. And the next day, the band would be in the recording, and Jeff hadn't even left the studio. Be in there for like 20 hours. And that's easy to do when you got a big bag of cocaine and a half a gallon of Jack Daniels. How Jeff was so good as an engineer, Workman, I think he passed away about 5 years ago. And Jeff, everybody knows that. He just did a massive amount of drugs and drank a lot of Jack Daniels, so he fit perfect with the other three guys. And that's the way it was. But he was a great engineer, and he was patient. Jeff was very patient. He'd let the arguments and the fights and the bickering, it just went over his head. He'd just be drinking a Jack and Coke and doing a couple lines of blow. And that's what he did. And then, unfortunately, doing that for decades, caught up with him and he passed away. And he was Roy Thomas Baker's guy.
Right.
Baker was doing like Zeppelin and all the other bands. Roy Thomas Baker was the engineer.
And I think Jeff had done 3 back-to-back albums with Tom Werman. And maybe that's why they had their issues, because they had done Shout at the Devil. And then I think right before your record, they're doing Twisted Sister, Stay Hungry.
Correct.
Now, when I talked to Tom, he said that Jeff was incredibly divisive and would fuck him over. He talked about how Jeff would record him in the studio and then edit things together and play it for the band later.
Oh, he talked about that? Yeah, they'd be recording Tom talking about this and that and girls and sex and whatever. And then they'd sit up all night and edit it to make it sound like he was a pervert. They would edit Tom talking and make it out of context. And they thought that was really funny, and I didn't think it was funny at all. It's stupid, childish things like that. And I'd say, guys, you guys sat up all night for 6 hours editing Werman talking about various stuff. They'd kind of prompt him, and you're wasting all this valuable recording time fucking around doing things like that and wasting thousands of dollars. It was frustrating for Tom. He left the project, and I don't blame him.
Any idea what that album ended up costing by the end of it?
Tooth and Nail?
Yeah.
No, probably $250,000.
Looked like you guys were on the verge of losing your deal after breaking the chains.
They wanted to drop us. Look, we did an arena tour. They gave it their best shot. We toured arenas with Bloodster Cult and Y&T. We had our shot. And the song Breaking the Chains was on every radio station. And what they called it back in the day was a passive hit. Everybody would say, oh, I love that song, but they didn't buy the record. So we get off the road after 8 months, busting our ass, and we come home. The record company goes, well, guys, you sold 100,000. And that's not really worth all the money we invested in you to keep you on the label. And I basically just begged and pleaded to give us one more shot. I went and had a meeting with Tom Sutat and everybody and said, let us just at least write some demos. And if you don't like them, you can drop us. If you like them, we'll make a record. So I talked to the boys and I said, guys, this is our last chance. If you guys don't pull together, we don't pull together as a band, we're all going to be back playing clubs singing Little Red Corvette. So the band pulled together. The 3 of them went and did their thing, got a big ounce of cocaine, and they did what they did. And I wrote my songs in my apartment. And between all my stuff, and Jeff was kind of like the referee. Jeff would work with George and Mick. On the way home, he'd stop by my house, and he'd work with me on my songs. And he was kind of like the referee between my songwriting and their songwriting. And that's what he brought to the table, that he kind of would ride the fence between those guys and me.
Were you wanting to actually be more aggressive with your voice on Tooth and Nail? Was that like a conscious decision?
No.
It was just kind of how the songs were turning out?
Yep. It's just the way the songs were written, and I had to sing appropriately.
Anything stand out from the Dio tour that you did for Tooth and Nail?
I just remember it was fun. We were getting famous, and we were enjoying it, and there was a ton of girls, and it was sold out every night, and all I remember was just a great tour. It was exciting. It was in the winter. I mean, some of it was in the winter. I remember they were getting off the tour bus and up to my knees in snow.
Dokken always seemed to have a winter vibe to him.
Yep, we were always on tour in the winter, which wreaked havoc on my voice.
Was that intentional, or was that just because of the timing of things?
Just timing. They want the record out for the holidays. They put it out for 8 weeks. We get it on the radio. That's November, December. And now we're ready to go on tour and back it up, and it's snowing like hell.
How's Mick doing in retirement?
Honestly, I remember the day he quit that I want to retire. We were at the airport, and we knew he was struggling. You know, his knees hurt, his arms hurt, his elbows hurt, his fingers hurt. And I remember he pulled me aside. We only had 3 shows to go. We had a couple of days off, and we were standing outside in front of the airport, and he says, "Look, man, I can't do this anymore." He said, "I just can't." And I said, "You're not happy?" And he goes, "No, I just can't physically do it. I'm done. I've been playing drums for 50 years since I was 10 years old. And my body's worn out. My back hurts, and there's like little signs, like when we get off the airplane, we'd be taking our carry-ons and walking the baggage, and Mick would be way behind us, walking real slow and limping, and his hips hurt and his legs hurt. And, he just wore himself out like a football player. You play football, and you get beat up long enough, you can't play football anymore. And Mick had the hardest job in the whole band. I'd like to see anybody bash those drums for 50 years and not get injured. Same as Neil Peart and Rush. He retired because of all his physical problems. Because you play drums, it kicks your ass. Just flying would hurt Mick's back and his hips, just sitting in the plane. He'd be in a lot of pain. A couple of times I used to have to help him up out of his seat because he's just hurting. The only drummer I know that's been around forever since he played Woodstock in Black Oak, Arkansas is Tommy Aldridge. When I did the Scorpions Whitesnake tour, I was shocked that I'd hear somebody playing drums backstage in the dressing rooms. And Tommy actually would set up a drum set and warm up before the show on the drums. I was blown away by that. Tommy has taken care of himself. A skinny guy, he would literally put a drum set in the dressing room with Whitesnake. He would warm up, basically play the show twice, and he'd be playing drums, warming up for an hour for the show. And I was very impressed by that.
So what is Mick doing nowadays?
Honestly, I have not spoken to him since the day he left the band. We're friends for 40 years. He went off social media. He shut all his social media down, his website. I heard a week after he got home, he put his drums up for sale. And I hear that he's just living in Arizona, riding his Harley and kicking back and playing PlayStation, But he kind of, for some reason, broke off contact with everybody. I know he did a video with Lynch and Pilson and Robert Mason called The End Machine, and he's playing drums on that in the video. But I did notice in the video of The End Machine, I know Mick pretty well, and I can see Mick in the shot, and he's playing a lot softer than he used to. But I have not spoken to Mick since the day he left the group, which was kind of sad because I always...
God, no kidding.
We grew up together.
I know he went with Lynch for that period, but then he came back and has been with you, I think, ever since, right?
15 years, yeah.
Right.
He'd come stay at my house, and he lived with me, and I remember I sold my house in Manhattan Beach, and Mick and I went and rented one of those Oakwood Gardens apartments for a few months. We were living together until we went on the road, and so, Mick and I had a long friendship. Why he didn't want to stay incommunicado with anybody, I can't answer. You'd have to ask Mick. Mick sees it as his past, and he just wants to let it go.
Now, you and George seem to be on the mend. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, we're too old to argue.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. Is it just kind of age and wisdom that...
Not only now, nobody does drugs anymore. Nobody drinks, I mean, Pilson was a heavy drinker, back in the 80s. He started going to AA 27 years ago, and he's been clean forever. He's been in Foreigner for over 20 years. And so, everybody found their way. You either get clean or die.
Did you and George ever throw down back in the day?
Unfortunately, yes, a few times.
Who got the best?
Not going to answer that.